Hello, Andy. Hey, Tony.
Welcome, welcome to
Sorry.
welcome to Football Fever. Welcome back to another jam-packed show this week, and once again we have a jam-packed show. We'll be speaking very shortly with goalkeeper star from the Auckland FC, Alex Paulson. Later on in our Imperial show, we'll also catch up with Andy Montgomery, the Mount Druitt Rangers coach. And now we've also got our man on the line, Stealth Tony Rallis. We'll go through all the big news coming out of the Iraq national team with some local coaches joining the Iraq national team. We've got big news out of there. We'll also talk about the shock CEO exit of James Johnson, the what's happening with the debt with the FFA. We'll go through that with all our man Tony Rallis, but we'll say a good evening first to Andy O. Good evening, Andy.
Evening, Chubbs. Boys, how are we?
It's
What
always
are we?
Monday comes very quickly around, and always we've got jam-packed news.
It does, mate. It does. It was another fine, entertaining weekend of football, and looking forward to catching up and hearing a few things, actually, in particular, what the news is locally and particularly around James Johnson.
Stealth, Tony, good evening. You've been a pretty busy man, I believe, this week. It sounds by the likes with Graham Arnold, as we're going to speak later, joining up with the Iraq national team. But like we said, very shortly, we'll catch up with the star goalkeeper of Auckland FC, who's had a great season, Alex Paulson, we know. Also spent time at Bournemouth as well.
Gentlemen, cheers. It has been a heavy week for me, Chubba. But we'll talk about Arnie and the Australian contingent that is holding the hopes of 48 million Iraqi people. First time qualification, hopefully, since 1986. Some of the things that Arnie was on the phone with him recently, about an hour ago, some of the things that are going on over there, freaky. The passion in those countries is just another tier.
Mm.
Just before Alex goes on, let's just quickly go through the two major games, elimination finals that we had. And one went the way we predicted, but certainly the other game didn't. Western United in a classic 5-goal thriller beat Adelaide United 3-2 on Friday night. It was a great game. I watched that game, very entertaining game. And then we had the shock result of the Western Sydney Wanderers going into the game 12 games unbeaten, but were beaten by Melbourne Victory 2-1 with a great crowd, great game. But I think both results, both teams that won, Tony and Andy, you probably would agree with me, probably both deserve to go through based on the 90 minutes.
Oh yeah, I think so, Chubbs. And I don't know whether that victory one was a bit of a shock. I mean, obviously we're disappointed, we're Wanderers fans, but I was at the previous game when Wanderers came back from 2-0 down in the regular season and beat Victory. And then you actually, I think the scoreline sort of flattered the Wanderers that particular night. I remember watching that game and Wanderers goalkeeper, whose name escapes me at the moment, had an absolute blinder. Lawrence Thomas had an absolute blinder, kept Wanderers in the game. And Melbourne Victory, you can see, they've just got threatening players. But I mean, Daniel Arzani, wow, that performance on Saturday really tore the Wanderers to shreds. But I've got to say, obviously, the better team won.
Stealth, your thoughts on both games?
I was expecting Melbourne's Western United to beat Adelaide United. I'm not sure what's happening at Adelaide United. It's a shame. Great club, great structure, but I think they've been struggling for a while. And it was always expected that Western United would get that result. In fact, to be honest, 3-2 probably flatters Adelaide United. With respect to Melbourne Victory, Western Sydney Wanderers, I'm saddened that those two were paired off but after 12 undefeated weeks, it was, every time you don't get defeated, the following week's a chance of you to be defeated. I think some players went missing. Nicholas Milanovic went missing. Brandon Barello went missing. When you got a 21-year-old Anthony Pendazopoulos, who's probably their best player, that tells you a lot about what their front third didn't do. Having said that, they were competitive. I think kudos to Arthur Dillis. I think he played the patient game. He's played the long game through this process. He's copped a lot of heat. So it's kudos to him for his achievements. And, I think the Stajic Dillis after game function was probably more entertaining than the game.
Stealth, I've seen
What's
this
that about?
And Andy, I've seen this following football a long time when a team goes like Wanderers, where they go 12 games unbeaten on a great run, then come a big game, the semi-final, and they're out. Like, you see it a lot in football. Like, do you feel like they mentally were up for those 12 weeks and it maybe just got too much at the end?
I think, Chubba, you've got to look at the situation. Barello and Milanovic have been outstanding, but really, how much experience have they got in big games? I'm not sure. Their centre back pairing of Bonatic and Pandazopoulos and Kleur, um, Priestman, they haven't had a lot of big game entertainment as semi-finals back into town games. So I think that cost them. I really do. I think the experience of Melbourne Victory and led from defence was, I think, got Victory over the line. Like I said, I'm saddened that those two were paired off. I was loving the Western Sydney Wanderers revival, to be honest. But kudos to Arthur Papas. To Arthur Dillis. He's done an outstanding job.
Yeah, definitely done a terrific job there, Arthur Dillis with Melbourne Victory. So now we know it's going to be now. We've got two legs. So we're playing two legs. In the first leg Friday night, we've got Western United taking on Melbourne City. And then, of course, Melbourne Victory taking on the minor premiers Auckland FC on Saturday night. So two huge games. Andy, personally, I believe that, well, before we'll get into the games later because we've got our guest now joining us, the star of goalkeeper of Auckland FC, who's had a great season in the Hyundai A-League this year, in Alex Paulson. Good evening, Alex.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Evening, Alex.
You're looking super cool, champ. A bit like your goalkeeping performances this year. Geez, this football stuff must be easy, huh? Came out of last year with Wellington. Basically, you'd admit this as an unknown. Carried the team with 5 or 6 penalty saves, qualified for the finals. Top performance by Wellington. A whole bunch of players got sold, including yourself. Now you've gone to Auckland and you replicated it. Premier's Plate and the rest. This must be easy stuff for you, huh?
It sounds like a funny resume, to be honest. It sounds like a pretty nice CV. But no, it's fantastic to, kind of back up the season from the performances and the season that I had last year with the Knicks as well, because, it was one of those things where, I felt like I've done everything in my, everything that I can do that I've controlled in order to make sure that I can take that next step forward to go to Europe and, test myself there. But I think in hindsight, it was actually, good for me to still come back and, have that extra season to get more game time, get more appearances under my belt as well in order to develop, because, this season, arguably, I'd probably say there's a lot more challenges that I had to face that I don't think I would have faced if I was over in Europe as well. So, yeah, I was just kind of blessed to have the opportunity to pan it out how it's panned out so far.
Alex, I know I spoke to you a few weeks ago and you're a bit nervous. You said, look, you really wanted to be part of the Premier's Plate. You really wanted to be part of the first-year wonder team in Auckland. I have to ask you this. What have been the major differences between your first year at Wellington as the number one keeper and coming in as a star keeper to a new franchise?
Yeah, I think it's more the label on it. I think it's more or less the case that coming into Auckland FC in the second year, I'd say I'd like to think there'd be a lot more pressure as well, considering, off the back end of last year having, good performances and, taking the team into, one of the historic seasons within the club, to then people thinking, oh, can he back it up, in the next season in a rival team in his hometown as a marquee player, and then also, as a player that's on loan from Bournemouth as well. So there's obviously all those type of thought processes that, a lot of people were thinking, maybe a lot of self-doubts as well. But, I'd say those are the type of challenges that I had to face as well. And I think that's the difference, compared to last season as well.
You've come into a team backed by Bill Foley, who owns Bournemouth amongst 355,000 other clubs in multiple sports. Expectations are high. Did you feel the pressure of playing in your hometown in front of family and friends?
Yeah, I think you do, especially as a hometown boy. Like, it was my first time where my parents can actually, come to every single home game. That hasn't really been happening for the better part of 6 years being down in Wellington. So, you obviously want to make sure that you're, performing the best that you possibly can because I don't really get the opportunity to see you play. So it was probably that type of thought that was, going across the back of my mind, in terms of, that type of pressure. But at the same time, me and you both know that I'm always a nervous wreck on game days.
That makes two of us. Um, Alex, it's been an unbelievable trajectory. I still recall Wellington losing Ollie Sale, deciding to go with you in your first year, semi-finals with Wellington, New Zealand national team, and all of a sudden, the best competition in the world has no less than three clubs that come for you: Bournemouth, Liverpool, and an inquiry from Chelsea. How does one so young confront and deal with such success but pressure at the same time?
So I think I cut you out there, but hopefully that works. Oh, there we go. Okay. Um, yeah, I think especially when you have top teams like Chelsea, Liverpool, and also Bournemouth, still very much interested in me at the Wellington Phoenix. I think it was a bit of a shock. You get that like I don't know, you get that imposter syndrome because you kind of feel like, oh, is this actually me? Like, is this some of these clubs actually looking at me after the season that I've had? Because let's not sugarcoat anything, but this is the league where it's probably one of the best leagues in the world, maybe if not the best. So you're looking at that and you're like, oh, there's this kid from New Zealand playing in the A League as well that's very much interested in, and he's been performing well, and they wanted to take an interest in it. It's just sometimes hard to fathom those type of moments. It's a bit surreal. Still looking back on it now, because as you said beforehand, like being back up to Oliver Sale, who is when he was at the Wellington Phoenix performed very 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 well, and it was hard to kind of break in, but then to get my chance after he left, and then kind of perform the way I did, it was just kind of like a 0 to 100 moment.
I want to move forward now to Steve Coric, Auckland City, Auckland FC, Terry McLean on the phone, Bournemouth, and all the rest of it. This year, what have you found the biggest difference between Wellington and Auckland FC? And what has been the real reason of this immediate success for a new franchise?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think there's different factors that play into the two different teams. But I think what I've noticed specifically here at Auckland is just, I think, just the minute that I've been welcomed into the club, they've just made it so comforting and then so easy for me to settle in because they're just so warm to ask if I needed anything or if I needed any help going around or finding my feet a little bit. So that's a testament to the culture, the values, the foundation that they try to instill from the start, especially from starting a brand new franchise. They've done such an excellent job at, welcoming myself, some of the Australian boys, some of the visa boys as well, because it's different. It's a different environment as well, but it's been fantastic as well. And I think the culture within our group, especially the boys, I think Auckland FC have done a good job of not only finding quality players, but finding good characters as well, because everybody can gel and everybody can mix and mingle with everyone. Like I think that's also an important thing to have within a team, because not only do you want to play individually, but you also want to play so that you don't want to let your teammate down as well. And I think that's probably the best, and that's what kind of helped us towards success.
I have to ask you this: it was a loan deal from Bournemouth back to their sister club, Auckland, for various reasons, including getting a proper visa. We understand that the intention is Bournemouth's going to recall you back, and you're going to go into pre-season with Bournemouth. What are your expectations when you do go there, and where does Alex Paulsen see himself 10 years from now?
Yeah, that's also a very good question. I think heading back to preseason with Bournemouth, I think it's more, those 2 to 3 weeks as a trial period. Like, I'm kind of going there to kind of try and perform underneath the head coach and make sure that he can, see what I'm capable of performing like. Or, I guess the A-Leagues was good to kind of give him a rough guideline, but to actually go back there and, for him to see it in his own eyes as well, that's kind of my goal in the next, 2 to 3 weeks when I'm having preseason there. And then I think in the next, 10 years, I'd like to say I want to play in the top 5 best leagues around the world.
Final question for me before I pass you on to the boys. New Zealand's qualified for a World Cup, one of the first countries, nations to do so. What does that mean to you and your journey and to your family to represent your country on the biggest stage in world football?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, 16 years it took for us to qualify for World Cup. And I remember as a kid watching that 2010 World Cup. It was so surreal. You find a lot of iconic moments like the Shabalala goal, and doing this iconic celebration as well. So it was just, one of those moments that you kind of look as a kid and you're like, wow, that was so enjoyable, and I really want to, one day play at that World Cup or let alone qualify. And then to get that opportunity now to have qualified for the World Cup and then, you know, put myself in a position where, one day I like to think I want to put myself and push myself to, play at the World Cup. So it's huge for younger generations coming up as well, looking at New Zealand and seeing them perform. And I think just being well known and letting other countries know that, New Zealand's not just a rugby dominant country, but, we've also got a lot of talent here as well. You look at Chris Wood and what he's doing over there at England as well. So with Nottingham Forest, so it's huge, yeah. But yeah, the World Cup is fantastic and it's a great opportunity for New Zealand.
Yes.
Alex, congratulations. For a goalkeeper, you're just still a baby and your achievements already have been incredible. I mean, goalkeepers can play till 40, so what you've achieved in this short time is incredible, and that's credit to yourself, your family, and everything. And we'll love to see you back at Bournemouth one day and playing in the Premier League. That'd be an unbelievable experience. But let's just look forward with Auckland FC. What a season you had! You won the Premier's Plate, like Tony said, incredible achievement. Wanderers done it back in when they first joined the franchise. Couldn't actually do the double. Now it probably starts like a little bit of another competition, you could say. Now you're going to play Melbourne Victory over 2 legs. How is the team looking, and how excited are you? And what are the how's the camp feeling? Ready to go travel away to Melbourne this week, and the battle over the next 2 legs.
Yeah, I think everybody within the team has understood that Melbourne Victory are a very good side, and regardless of what position they are on the table, can't really underestimate them, because across all final series, they've always been known to, dominate within those final series, whether that be in the elimination finals or semi-final leagues or even the grand final. Just have a look at last year, I don't know if they were placed like 5th or 6th or whatnot, but they still managed to reach the grand final. So it's just taking that into account, and I think using that as fuel for us, because I think we're a team that we thrive on opportunity and we thrive on adrenaline as well. So it's just one of those things where we want to really, take it to Melbourne Victory as much as we can. And these next 2 games are going to be hard because the playoffs, it's a different type of football. It's a lot more passionate. There's a lot more there's a lot more grit involved as well. That's what I've kind of learned from the last semi-finals that I was in. So it's kind of just raising another level and reaching a new mark as well. So it's just, it's going to be very exciting. And the culture within the team, they're very focused, and they're trying to make sure that, we can prepare ourselves the best we can leading into these next couple of games.
I'm really excited for it, because the Melbourne Victory crowd will be out and about this week, and then I'm sure the following week Auckland, it's going to be an amazing scenes down there for the first ever semi-final, major semi-final. So I wish you all the best, and I just hope we're going to see a great game. Whoever goes through, I think both teams are outstanding. But the season you guys had, I would love to see you go all the way and do the double because you have just had an exceptional season. But that's all from me. I'll leave you with Andy.
Yeah, yeah, Alex, mate. This is going to be a tantalising clash over the two legs. I think we touched on before you jumped on the amount of quality and experience Melbourne Victory had to watch. I think you took them over the line against the Wanderers over the weekend, but you guys went down there not long ago, a few weeks ago, and done the job on Melbourne Victory. And I think Chubba just touched on it too. The big benefit you guys have got is that home crowd it's amazing. I mean, we know how much it lifts. I guess you've experienced it firsthand, but they're like a 12th man for you guys. But how important is this first leg going to be for you guys in terms of going back to Auckland and having something really really to play for in front of those fans?
Yeah, I think it's very important as well because going over to Melbourne is going to be very hard. As you already touched on a little bit, like the atmosphere is very hostile. They've got some great fans. They've got a great fan base. Probably one of the best as well in the league. And you got to go there and stay very focused on what you can control because Melbourne Victory are a team that thrive on the 12th man, similar to us. But I think it's just going in there with our heads. Focus on what we can control and make sure that we try our best to get a result, and then bring it back to our second leg because I think the Port they've done a fantastic job over the whole season. I think the average has been up to 15 to 18,000 every game, so it's just so surreal to have the crowd at Auckland FC, especially at Go Media Stadium in their debut season to be right behind us as that 12th man because it just popping off from minute 1 to minute 90 as well. So it's going to be very important.
Alex, like I said, I hope you get to the greats like the Mark Bosnich who played over in the Premier League and other Zelko Kalatzes who played at AC Milan. I think you're on your way to having a great career. I mean, you're just a baby, like I said, and your achievements are already incredible. Keep working hard, keep doing what you're doing, and I'm sure we'll be watching you on the biggest stage not too long away.
No, thanks, guys. Thanks for taking the time to have a chat as well. Appreciate that.
Good luck this week, son.
Good luck, Alex.
Good luck.
Thanks, mate.
Yes. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Tony, for a goalkeeper, he's still a baby, 22 years old. His achievements are already incredible, and like I said, he'll reach those. Hopefully, he'll reach those greats like Dirko Kalac playing at AC Milan or the Bosniches at Man United, Aston Villa. And I've watched him at Auckland. He's a phenomenal goalkeeper. He's got the world at his feet.
He's definitely got all the ingredients and more importantly, the mental capacity. Yeah. And he's a tremendous young man from a tremendous young family. Very focused, very determined, very resilient. But as you say, we're not going to see the best of him till 25, 26, 27. God willing, I expect him to be in the top 5 leagues for a long, long, long time.
Tony, just something interesting that he touched on, which I know from, I guess, rugby league. You've got coaches like Craig Bellamy and now the young one coming through at the Bulldogs, Cameron Serraldo. But he mentioned the character that they brought into Auckland FC, and the character of the player, and on and off the field how important that is, and that's where Stevie Corica's got it right, hasn't he? He's brought in these players, and obviously the owner Bill Foley. They're brought in. It looks like the characters are just what taking this team to the level they're at the moment.
You'd appreciate this, Andy, and using another sports administrator as an example. The late great Peter Moore of the Canterbury Bulldogs used to say, "It all starts at the front office." Yeah. We work hard, we train hard, we play hard, and we party hard. And Steve Corica is an epitome of that. He copped a lot of unfair criticism from a lot of theorists and idiots. A lot of people said that he wouldn't make the top 6. And what makes it important, he spent some money on the top 5 foreigners and Brimmer and Paulson. But outside that, there's a lot of NPL players from New Zealand that he's given opportunities and a lot of youngsters. And he's had some support. Terry McFlynn is an outstanding ally of his. Nick Becker, the CEO, we've discussed him before. He's done a tremendous job commercially and from a community and cultural perspective. Bill Foley sets the standards. He's actually from all reports just a humble man with tremendous principles, notwithstanding his great success. And that's reflective across all his clubs, Bournemouth and Auckland, and a couple of the other interests that he has in Hibs, etc. For me, Corica is so under appreciated. There's an argument for me that he's up there with Arnold, Popovich, and Muscat.
Yeah,
he has to be.
He has to be. He's done a terrific job, and we went through his coaching stats when we had him on only a week ago. Incredible achievements, incredible, and he's done it.
Is it fair to say the winner of this tie wins the whole thing? Boy?
Well, that's what I was going to quickly get your tips for these two games before we move with stealth with a few topics that have been, going through the week. But that's what Melbourne Victory, Auckland. I mean, it's the first leg, Tony. It's a very hard game for Auckland, like you said, because the Melbourne Victory crowd will be up for it. They had a good win against the Wanderers, but what do you think? That Auckland can do it, or?
And look, which Melbourne Victory turn up, and I'll tell you what's going to be determined. I'm not prepared to call this one in Melbourne. I will say this: there's 28,000 people that fit into the Auckland FC stadium. It'd be very disappointing if 28.5 to 30,000 Melbourne Victory fans didn't turn up. I must say their crowds have been a bit poor this year. Probably reflective of that genius CEO and football director, Caroline Carnegie and John De Luca, that lost $10 million this year and have buried that club's DNA.
I spoke to the assistant coach today, Nick Stavrola, and he was telling me that the ticket sales are looking very good for the first day. They're expecting a massive crowd.
Is that Nick Stavroulakis that's walking out and going to Newcastle Jets?
That's the one.
Oh, well, that's interesting that he's got an opinion.
Well, he's still the assistant, isn't he? So he's still got an opinion. What do you want me to say, Stills?
Oh, well, every theorist has got an opinion.
100%. In the other game's going to be hard to call too. This one, I'm tipping. My tip, I think Western United can beat Melbourne City over the two legs because I think Melbourne struggle to score goals, Melbourne City. But you guys have been interesting. I think it's another hard game there too over two legs.
I think, mate, it's a toss of a coin.
Yeah.
That both coaches have done tremendous jobs to create stability. Melbourne City, for all its injuries, has punched above its weight. John Aloisi has reinvented himself. He was a guy that previously considered anyone under 27 years of age as a work in progress. But you've got to give him credit for what he's done. He's played a lot of kids. He's rejuvenated a lot of guys. And probably, if I'm really honest, I think they've rejuvenated him and saved his career. So kudos to him. Kudos to Vidmar, two former great Socceroos. And again, too hard to call for me. I think the home half a goal advantage to Western United.
Definitely, I think, Andy, these games are going to go over the two legs. I don't think you'll see a big lead in any of these first legs, like a blowout or anything. I think it's going to go right down to the wire in both legs.
Yeah, the biggest thing I tend to agree. I'll be leaning towards Western United over Melbourne City. They've definitely come a long way in recent times and just seem to be hitting form at the right time. But Chubbs, in that Melbourne Victory Auckland FC tie, like I said, Auckland went down there just a few weeks ago and done the number on them.
They did do the number on them.
I'm thinking Melbourne Victory in that space of a couple of weeks, and we saw on the weekend. I think they would have got a lot out of that. And I'll probably be leaning towards the Melbourne Victory.
I think Victory can win the first leg, and then Auckland beat them in the second leg.
And they had a draw in the regular season over there in Auckland as well, a 0-0 draw. So.
Anyway, moving right along. So we had a lot of football news coming out of Australian football this week, but probably the one big story that caught our attention the last couple of days, because we know Graham Arnold was coach of the Socceroos, so successful in the last World Cup, and quit in the campaign this season before Tony Popovich came out. But the big news coming out of the football world is Graham Arnold has joined up with the Iraq national team, who we know need to win the next two games to qualify for the next World Cup. In more big news, Robbie Stanton, who we know departed Newcastle Jets at the end of this A-League season, has also joined up with Graham Arnold as assistant coach. And like you said earlier, Zorko Kalatz, as we know very well, will be joining up as well. So we've got three ex-Socceroos, three key men from our national country, Tony. They're joining up, are we saying with the enemy? They're joining up with Iraq. And, you know, it's going to be interesting times ahead because we know how passionate Iraq is with their football. We see them when they won the Asian Cup. How long ago was that, Andy? Now we were celebrating in the streets of Fairfield.
It was two or three cups ago, so maybe 6 years ago or something.
6 years ago, and now they're like, well, they were practically had a foot in the World Cup until that loss to Palestine. Now they're going to need to win the next two games, Tony. But we know you're very close to Graham Arnold. Can you tell us how this all came about?
Graham obviously resigned from Football Australia, probably exhausted after 43 years of being involved in Australian football as a player and assistant coach and obviously national coach. He did the right thing by his country, stepped aside, citing that he couldn't do much more, having achieved a wonderful 2022 World Cup where he did tremendously well. The team did tremendously well. Look, he's obviously been looking for work, but wasn't interested in just jumping into any job. Mr. Adnan, the president of the Iraqi Football Association, and I have been speaking for the best part of 10 days. There were some interesting discussions, and they're a passionate
passionate football country.
Look, they're unbelievably passionate. Adnan is the president of the Football Association, is a former great player, one of the last players to qualify in 1986 at the World Cup for Iraq. His words to me was, Tony, as long as I go to a World Cup with Iraq, I'm happy to leave this earth. So that's how passionate they are. There's 48 million Iraqis in Iraq, and God knows there's probably another 10 or 12 million around the world. Extremely passionate. I haven't seen passion like that. I just haven't seen it. And I've dealt with it all around the world. So Graham was interviewed. The alignments were there. They wanted a coach that knew the region and had success internationally. And of course, then we proceeded to put a team around him. Robbie Stanton, I know Maurice Bissetto, the great FIFA PlayStation sports director of Newcastle Jets, didn't think much in the way he conducted himself with Robbie, but Robbie's a tremendous coach, and Arnie gave him the tremendous compliment today by saying he's a freak with his work ethic and his knowledge. Zelko Kalic, a great Australian international Socceroo, will be the goalkeeping coach. Rennie Mullenstein, the former Socceroo assistant at Manchester United, head coach to Sir Alex Ferguson for 7 or 8 years. He will be there with Arnie. And then there's a team around him. They do have to win. I think they could probably get away with a win and a draw if results went their way.
Tony, is this a short term? If he doesn't qualify for the World Cup, he will continue?
Yeah, look, Arnie put his hand up. This was a longer term contract, but Arnie said, listen, if I don't qualify, you sack me or terminate the contract. So he's fairly confident that the Iraqi's got tremendous talent. And if you watch their games, and I've watched a few, they're passionate, they're driven. Let's not forget we've got a couple of A-League players in the Iraqi national team, Mal Tay from Western Sydney Wanderers and Young Shamoun from Western United. The passion is unbelievable. I wish them luck. It's a flagship. It's no different to Kevin Muscat doing so well in Japan and China, or Postecoglou doing well in Japan and Celtic, and then moving on to Tottenham. We want Australian coaches to do well, and Arnie's one of the best, and hopefully he can see it through. But it is a challenge. They're playing Korea at home, and then they've got Jordan away. But even if they finish in third split, they've got the playoffs, so there's a second chance, possibly a third chance.
Yeah.
But exciting time. Speaking to Arnie today, it's the old Arnie of old days. I need to thank Football Australia because there was some restrictions in his resignation that we needed to get their permission, and they were gracious in James Johnson and Antar Isaac and the rest of the board, and we're grateful that they saw logic in that release.
As you know, it's the mother country for me, mate, Iraq, and I can tell you it's been a very, very welcome appointment. A lot of even speaking to my old man about it over the weekend. Very excited. The only thing coming from the I guess the elderly or the Iraqi people that are born there and know sort of how the club and how the country and what it's gone through in recent years is Arnie needs to stamp his own authority. I think there's been a lot of, as you probably know, there's a lot of I'll pick the team and I'll do all of that off the field that happens, and unfortunately it's to the detriment of the success of the country. But you're right, the talent, the passion is there. As Chubba mentioned, we experienced those things not long ago when they won the Asian Cup. But if Arnie can control off field, that sort of stuff, look, they really, really stumbled with that loss to Palestine. That would have given them, as Chubba said, 1 foot into the World Cup. But look, I'll take my hat off to him for taking the job on. But it's that off-field stuff that really, I hope it doesn't really challenge him and the coaching crew in terms of what they want to achieve.
I know he's only been there for 48, 62 hours, something like that. He's probably done about 40 hours work. He's gone to the government. He's gone, and that's the difference in the passion of that country's love of football. He's done preference conferences. He's gone to games. He's gone to the federation. He was telling me today, he was able to stop the competition during the time that he wants 10-day camp because he needs to understand more about the players and their characters. The federation supported him on that. Mr. Adnan has been tremendous, a former captain and great player of Iraq. He's now the president of the Football Association. So far, so good. Nothing has been a problem.
Good.
And, it's funny, we hear about countries and their people and their characters and all, but the passion resonates talking to these people. It's their life. I mean, someone said to me that of the 48 million, 25 million are likely to watch the World Cup. Now, when we sit there and go, 27 million live in Australia and 1.4 million watch the State of Origin, and everyone wants to talk about how grand that is. Imagine that 25 million people of the 48 are likely to tune in and watch the World Cup game. Like that's just phenomenal. That's just unbelievable.
We've always said one day we can get them involved in the Isuzu A-League somehow would be incredible because it's...
Well, you know that, Chubb. I'm a big
believer
in Iraq football, Indonesian football, Vietnamese football. These are the cultures and the communities that we need to work with
Tony,
in our own country.
We need to move on. We need to move on because we had the big shock news during the week of James Johnson stepping down as chief executive of the FFA. In saying that as well, there's been a big article written about the FFA. He's got their big annual announcement on May the 23rd, and it looks like the budget's blown out from $8 million and so on. It's in shambles again, worse than it's ever been before. What are you hearing about everything?
The budget, they generated 121 million in income and they lost 9 million. So let's just scale it back a little bit, right? The illustrious football buffoons of Caroline Kaniga, the CEO of Melbourne Victory, and John Dideluzza, the sports director, they lost 10 million on 16 million of revenue. So let's not make it sound like it's bigger than what it is. Was it time for James and the board to go to part ways? Possibly. I mean, it's a difficult job.
5.5 years.
Yeah, it's challenging. It's draining. It takes a lot out of you. It's a lot of travel. It affects your family. It's a new board. They want to go in a new direction. I've got no problem with that. But let's not over-dramatise the financials, huh? I remember the bullfeds at Melbourne Victory, John Dideluzza and Caroline Kaniga, both those idiots lost $10 million on 16 million revenue. The other blokes lost 9 million based on reports on 121 million revenue. There's clubs in the A-League clubs collectively have lost 60 million. And let me tell you, they're not at 120 million revenue. And where James has probably erred, he's probably gone all in on the Matildas. And I'm a big fan of the Matildas. They're a great brand, and I believe in female sports. But they've got to justify their existence. They've got to generate their revenue. And if they generate more revenue than the men, they should be paid more than the men. But if they're not generating the revenue of the men, they should not be asking for the same revenue of men. It's very simple. Equality. That's the word we use, but we've gone too far to the left in this woke society that we live in.
Who are the candidates you're hearing, or the serious candidate to take?
I'm hearing the Queensland CEO is a candidate. I'm getting mixed reports on his ability. The Queensland Federation CEO is a candidate. Ideally, and people will probably say that I'm biased, for me, John Tatsamis, the Football New South Wales CEO, who's done a tremendous job in Football New South Wales, should become the Football Australia CEO. whether that happens or not, time will tell.
I actually caught up with John Satsimus the other night at the Wanderers medal. I failed to pose that question to him, Tony, because at that stage we hadn't heard about James Johnson. But I'll tell you what, he's looking well. He's looking very sharp. The mind was ticking. Some of the jokes that were coming out of there, mate, and his mate, the bloke looks like he's going better with age.
Well, he's a true football person, right? But a true football person that's actually come out of the sperm bank of Australian football. Okay, and then I say that respectfully. You'll probably want to smash me for this, but he's my standout candidate if they decide to approach him.
Interesting.
Well, let's hope they get the right person, because we know we've got exciting A-League semi-final series, and we need a strong Australian competition. And again, all the rumours about the A-League and all these financial troubles never help our games, especially when we've got these semi-final series and you want to hear stories like that now. But let's hope they all sort themselves out, like you said, Tony, and a bright future ahead of us. And once again, thank you for your input. You've done a terrific job. Congratulations again on, with Graham Arnold and Iraq, and you got that over the line. I know you've been busy, enjoying your glass of wine, and you still had time to help us here on the show. We really appreciate you. Never let us down. That's why you're the best in the business.
Gentlemen, have a great night.
Thanks, Tone. Cheers, mate.
Andy, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the W League, because we had huge games there?
Oh, Chubbs, yeah, that was a very entertaining weekend in the W League, as you mentioned, mate, yesterday. Yesterday, I'll start on that because there was a bit of a shock result, if you like. We were looking at potentially a Melbourne Derby grand final, but Melbourne City unfortunately went down to 10 men quite early. 25th minute, they had a red card. Lords Bosch got sent off. The American visa player that's over here for the A-League Women's, we should call it. But Central Coast ended up scoring quite late in that game. It actually went to extra time, Chubbs, and the last minute of extra time, they got the goal, 1-0. And after a first leg 2-2 result, that meant that Central Coast Mariners now are through to the grand final. As we mentioned, they'll be playing Melbourne Victory, and Melbourne Victory back on Saturday had a 3-1 win over Adelaide, the Adelaide women's team, and that finished 6-2 on aggregate. That was exactly the same result as the first leg, 3-1 and 3-1 on the weekend. So Melbourne Victory facing Central Coast Mariners. It's huge for Central Coast Mariners, Chubbs, as we know. The club's been a little bit of turmoil recently, so. For the women's team to make the grand final, it's huge. Let's hope a few of their fans can get to the grand final, which is next Sunday. Next Sunday at Melbourne. So a 3:15 p.m. kickoff. Really interesting to see how this one plays out. Melbourne Victory, they're just in unbelievable form. They've won their probably their last 8 to 10 games. So definitely going in as a favourites, but anything can happen, Chubbs. As we saw on the weekend with the red card, Central Coast Mariners definitely in it up to their ear.
100%, and exciting times ahead, like you said. Really going to be looking forward to that one, Indy. So we're going to see how that just plays out. Moving right along, we're going to turn our attention now to the New South Wales Premier League, and we know in about 5 minutes we're going to have Andy Montgomery, who's been a long-time coach at the Mount Druitt Rangers, done a terrific job up there with his brother over the time, and we're going to get an inside look at the Mount Druitt Rangers, like we've had a few clubs in the NPL this season. But I'll quickly read out the results in NPL 1, and then you can read out the results for the NPL 2. Andy, if you want to get them ready. I'll just quickly go through the results. We had Mount Druitt 0, Sutherland 0, Sydney Olympic 4, Sydney United 0 after that dramatic FFA Cup game during the week where Sydney United won 10-9 in penalties against Olympic, 3-all draw, 4, and then they had played again, but Olympic came out on top this time 4-0. In a shock result of the round, Marconi went down 3-0 to Wollongong Wolves. St. George City Apia had a 0-all draw. Blacktown City as well. They got absolutely walloped from Sydney FC Youth 5-0. And In the other game, Spirit got back on winning terms, beating Central Coast 3-1. So the table just quickly, Marconi first on 33 points, Rockdale second on 28, Spirit on third on 28 points, fourth Blacktown City on 27, fifth is Arpia on 24, sixth is Wollongong on 20. Just outside the top six, you've got Manly and Olympic on 19, St George City, Sydney FC Youth on 18, and Sydney United are now on 18 points. St George are on 15 points, Sutherland on 12, Western Sydney Wanderers are on 11, and the two teams that are only at the moment in those dreaded bottom two positions, you've got Mount Druitt on 9 points and Central Coast on 5 points. Let's go quickly
And
to Andy.
Wanderers in. You're missing a couple of team shops. I don't know where you're getting your.
Why?
Yeah, well, you missed Sydney Olympic are on 16.
No, Olympics on 19.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Okay.
I said that.
Okay, sorry. But yeah, no, the biggest result, as you mentioned, Chubbs, is that that Sydney FC game. Wow, I mean that. I think we spoke about it over the weekend, but the fact that they're potentially getting a few of the A-League players back into these squads, that'll be the Sydney FC and both the Sydney FC and the Wanderers actually. So, but that result for them yesterday, 5-0, a high-flying Blacktown City is.
We'll speak a little bit about that as well when we get Andy on very shortly. He's coming on in the next few minutes. Do you want me to read out the NPL 1 results, or you got them there in front of you?
I've got the NPL 1 results. So what do we've got here? SD Raiders down Blacktown Spartans 3-1. Mounties Wanderers 1-0 over Hills United. UNSW 3-1 over Bankstown City Lions. Roldamere 4-1 over Bunnerig White Eagles. Canterbury Bankstown 2, Northern Tigers 0. That's a big result there. Dulwich Hill, Chubbs, your boys. I don't know whether you're going to shed some light on this, but up 2-0, ended up going down 4-3 against Inter Lions. Yep. Same result in the MacArthur Eames Newcastle Jets game. That went to Newcastle Jets 4-3. And we had Hakawa Sydney 1, Bulls Academy 2.
I'll just quickly, and just the table on there, you've got SD Raiders first on 31 points. And of course, we know it's the top two, which are the big spots there. Northern Tigers are second on 28 points. You got Uni FC on 26 and Bulls Academy on 25, just away from that. And really the bottom two teams at the moment are sitting Mounties on 12 points and MacArthur Rams on 8 points. So SD Raiders have opened up a 3-point gap there up on the top, as we spoke to their coach last week, and looking really good for that, that spot for promotion. But what we'll do, Andy, I'll let Andy know that he can come on and we'll speak. We want to get a touch about, like I said, Andy McGovern has been a long time at Mount Druitt and they've done a lot of good things. They have been a club that has come up and down of late, but we'll speak to him in the next minute or two and get all the insight of what's happening down there at Mount Druitt.
No worries, Chubbs. I just want to mention again, and sorry to bring it up, mate, but that Dulwich Hill result on the weekend, I was watching it closely while you were there at the game, but you guys went 2-0 up. Midway through the second half, they pulled it back to 2-2. And Dulwich Hill, you guys scored again 3-2. And then the last, there was 2 goals you conceded in the last 6 minutes. So can you share a bit about what happened there?
Yeah, I will get to that. Before we do that, we'll get back to our game, Andy, because we've got the main man, Andy Montgomery from the Mount Druitt Rangers. Good evening, Andy.
Good evening, and thanks for having me on your show.
It's a pleasure. I know I only got to you on short notice today, but it was a great pleasure that you were more than happy to come on. We really appreciate that.
Awesome. Not a problem at all.
Firstly, before we get into a little bit about, because I've been following your results closely and what's happening, firstly, tell us a little bit about Mount Druitt Rangers. I mean, it's a club that's done a lot of wonderful things, especially in the youth and in the seniors over the last few years. You could say you've been a little bit of a yo-yo club at the last couple of seasons, going up and then coming down and then coming straight back up again. How hard is it, Andy, as you know, coming from NPL 1 back to the Premier League? There is a bit of a massive gap, and it is very hard, isn't it, to go straight back up to the Premier League and compete the way you want to compete?
Yeah, look, you're 100% right there. I joined the club in 2023 as the first team assistant, but so I can only really speak from my experience from there. But um, I think that the major difference between then and now is looking back, we were probably a little bit more of a reactive team, counter-attacking, sit in tight, try not to concede, hit on the counter, and not as proactive as I would probably like. So when we did go down there, it was almost like, okay, so we need to press the big reset button and work out what our identity is, get back to our strong roots and strong principles, which we did in 2024, and get the right type of player in and around the club to propel us back in, which we did at first ask. Now, leading into this season as well, we probably needed to be a little bit more possession based in NPL 1 to try and build something that's a bit more sustainable for the long term future. As probably most people are aware, we're not a club that's flushed with cash and afforded the revenues that some clubs do have out there. So we need to try and be brave and build something that's sustainable for the future here. And we've done that through the youth players and our we call them the seniors in the 18s and 20s. Try to build something really sustainable here and play an attractive playing style, which at times doesn't come off or hasn't come off, I can say. But we've got to be brave, continue to play the way that we do, and the results will turn.
I had the pleasure to work with two of your young starlets that I rate very highly in Caleb Jackson Brown and Thomas Lopez. I worked with both of them with Hills United, and I think they've got great futures. One day could be in the A League, and it was actually fantastic that your club actually gave him a chance at Mount Druitt, and I think that's where you said when you can bring in talent like that and work on that kind of talent, that's where the club, that's where the future is.
They really fit out the profile that we're going for. That sort of younger, hungry, talented profile of player that's mobile, technically and tactically very good. I did have the pleasure of working with Caleb for a few years when I was at Blacktown City, helping to bring him through as well. Tommy Lopez or Tilo that we like to call him. This is the first opportunity I've had to work with him, but their ceilings are massive for both of those players. The potential is huge, and it's just the same. Like when we look at guys like Caleb, 23, I think Caleb is. Tommy Lopez just turned 21. Alex Trajanowski turns 21 this year. Both the Rankin twins, 19, turning 20 this year. Jared Massarola turning 21. And apologies if I've left anyone else out, but Lockie Vasilius. There's plenty of potential in here. We just need to be patient.
Your Brazilian input has been very good as well.
Yeah, I've been chasing him for about 3 years. There's been a lot of late night calls, and unfortunately, whether it's in sort of Malta or Indonesia, the transfer windows just didn't quite line up at certain times. We thought we had him a couple of times, but it just didn't line up. But we were blessed that it got over the line this time.
Watching your watching your team, I think against many teams, including last week, you were dominant over Sutherland. Despite in most parts of the game, you were really dominant, and I think you were unlucky you didn't get a result. And I also remember the game against Rockdale, you went down 3-2 in the final minute, and probably should have won that game. And so I think it's like the results are really close, and it's just like a flick of a switch. A few results go your way, and you'll be sitting much higher on the table because, like I said, some of the football you have played in large parts of the game has actually been entertaining and great to watch.
I appreciate that. That's great feedback for us to take on board because at times you can sort of put the horse before the cart and start doubting what you're trying to do, but I think the overarching message, I think box to box, we've been very good. Now it's just a matter of getting the right behaviours, cues, and execution in the attacking and defensive end, and it will all click. I'm really confident of that, and we're only going to get better and better.
Andy?
Yeah, Andy, mate, just touching on that again. It's look, the elephant in the room is you guys obviously aren't sitting where you'd probably like to be sitting, somewhat halfway through the season. But it's encouraging to hear that you're quite confident that you can sort of pull yourself out of that, I suppose, relegation battle, if you want to call it that. But the results have been very, very mixed, and there's been a lot of positive there. So is that another thing where against good competition, as Chuba mentioned, but is that something else that gives you guys, and the team, coaching staff, confidence that you can drag yourself out of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's probably 3 games where we just weren't in it. We're totally outclassed, as a lot of people do when they go to Manly on a Friday night, especially travelling from the west, battling the traffic. Getting yourself mentally prepared. We got touched up there. The Apia away result. I mean, Apia were just sensational that night. But all the other games we were competitive. Wollongong, I thought, for pretty decent periods, let's say. I won't say that we were dominant by any stretch, but for decent periods, I thought we controlled the game. Even when we went into a deeper block, I didn't feel that we were under any great threat until we turned over a penalty. And then against United as well, I thought we were quite comfortable too, creating opportunities to create without that sort of end product. But time, patience, consistent messaging. I'm hopeful that'll turn around.
The next 3 weeks, looking forward, I know you'd like to take it a week at a time, but being a local Marconi boy, I'm looking at that fixture in 3 weeks' time, a local derby, if you like, up here at Marconi Stadium. And the week before that, you got the Wanderers, again, probably another local derby. So how crucial are these? And obviously it starts this week with a Northwestern Spirit team who just bounced back over the weekend. But how far are you looking forward to these next couple of fixtures?
Look, we love every game. That's the reality. And that's the beautiful thing about our change room. Even though the results haven't been going our way, the boys just love playing. They love being together. They love training. And again, without it trying to sound like a cliche, every game is important, and we can only play or only beat what's in front of us, right? So whether that's Spirit, whether that's Marconi, whether that's Central Coast Mariners, Wanderers, we want to win every game. We want to be first to the car park. We want to be first in the change rooms. We want to be winning everything, to be honest. But we want to make sure that we're doing it in our style, and not sort of jagging a goal here and there. We want to build something that's really sustainable.
Andy, if they have the passion you showed when you got that red card this year, mate, the boys would be flying.
Sorry, you dropped that there. Yeah, I'm actually still a bit dark on that one, to be honest. Let's just say there was a little bit of a misunderstanding, and maybe some words that were assumed were said weren't said. But we copped that in the chin, and referees are always correct. And I apologise for any sort of misunderstanding, and we move on.
Andy, going back to the club now.
Diplomatic enough.
Going back to the club, your youth setup and everything about the club. Now we know a B League's coming in one day. I suppose all clubs one day dream about maybe one day being involved in that. And Mount Druitt, I mean, you get support from the community down there big time. How important has it been the youth league set up to get right down there this year and get it back to where? Because once upon a time, Mount Druitt at one stage were probably the best in the youth at one stage, and it sort of slipped up a little bit in the how important is to get the youth back to where they need to be?
But pretty cool for a club like ours. Like I mentioned, we can't at the top end go out and buy our way out of problems. We've got to create our own solutions. The beautiful thing, there was moments last year and leading into this year where we know that we're back on the right path again. Is all the youth kids were here, the JDL kids were here supporting us, going crazy when Andre Martins was scoring goals for us last year, and Wongi or Mendy were scoring goals. It was a really, really great feeling along here. And even this year, credit to them, everyone's behind each other, and that goes for the women's program as well. Like they're performing really well.
Yep.
We were down there the other night for the Sapphire Cup, supporting them as well. It's just a really community-driven family club where we all look after each other, because not many people do look after the West. So we've got to look after ourselves.
No, it's been great, and like I said, it's been great. I've been following Mount Druitt Rangers for a while now. I know you've done your passion. You and your brother down there have been doing a terrific job over the years, and like you said, I know how hard it is to play in this NPL1 competition. Trust me, and I know how hard it is to go back up. And then you go, I won it with Hills. You go back up, and how hard it is, and to match, like you said, the money that's been played around in the Premier League. It's very hard, and so people don't realise how much work there is in this competition. And like you said, those phone calls you make, it's all about how much work you do in the off season, how right you get it with players off the park. It's just the amount of hours you put in away from the game. It's incredible, and I know you do that in spades. So we love the passion. Congratulations on what's happening down there at Mount Druitt, and hopefully you continue on a great path, and hopefully you can get out of that dreaded top two and stay in the league this season. Bottom two, sorry, and stay in the league this season.
Yeah, you don't want to be in that dreaded top two, do you?
No.
I appreciate the kind words, guys. Really do.
Thanks, Andy. We'll see you at the Marconi fixture, mate.
Beautiful. Let's
we'll
get some sunflower seeds together, huh?
100%.
Yes,
Thank you. Champion. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. All the best.
Thanks, mate.
Ciao. Bye.
Andy, there's another club, like we said, Mount Druitt Rangers, been around a long time, and a big part, like you said, play a big part in the Western. And once upon a time, we're thriving in the youth, and but it just shows again how hard it is to go from NPL1 up to Premier League, and they've been a bit of a yo-yo for a lot of teams. It's just the gap, in wages and I suppose in quality, it's very hard.
Well, you as you mentioned, Chubb, you're experiencing it. I can talk firsthand in the women's youth space where my daughter plays. They actually were the club promoted from NPL2 in the youth to NPL1 this year. Mixed results, but their senior girls, as I think Andy mentioned, they played in the Sapphire Cup last week and were successful. The senior girls are travelling really, really well. As we know, I'm not sure if you're aware, but they decoupled the youth and seniors in the women's space, similar to what they've done in the boys or in the men's space just this season in the NPL1 competition. So, and in NPL2, I should say. So, their women's youth got promoted to NPL1. They're obviously doing a lot of good things off the field there at Mount Druitt Town Rangers.
Yeah, 100%. Looking at some of our chat box here, it's very hard to read the chat box because the way
I was just going to tell you that, mate. We've got to do something about that.
We've got to fix that up, because I can see Michael Fatulis has got a few messages there about Olympic and Rockdale. There's one here, boys. I'm trying to read it. Chubba, I think he's trying to say Western Sydney Wanderers Alan Stadic now might be bringing players back into the NPL team, as we know the other Wanderers are. And we know that happens now with Wanderers and FC. They will drop players. And you look at FC's result, beating Blacktown City 5-0. That's probably come on the back of players coming down. And we spoke about that, me and you, Andy, a few weeks back. Fair or not fair, that once this A-League is completed, well, now the Wanderers are out, you'll see Wanderers, Central Coast and Sydney FC Youth, by that result they had the other day, they will be a lot stronger coming now into the second round.
Oh, it's going to happen. I can tell you it's going to happen also in the women's space, Chubbs. With the A-League women's competition nearing an end, a lot of the girls now go back to NPL1 clubs, whether it's local or interstate. So NPL competitions interstate. But yeah, even here, I can tell you in NPL1 in the women's teams like Macarthur Rams, Mount Druitt. RPs, they start picking up players from these other clubs, A-League women's clubs. That now that the season's competition, the competition has ended. So as you mentioned, Sydney FC, Western Sydney Wanderers, they're going to start playing a lot of those boys that were in the A-League squad down in the NPL competition, which just adds to the I think it adds to the entertainment jobs, and the class and the talent that you're going to see in these NPL games. As we already know, it's at a great standard.
Yeah.
You've got to do something about that chat box, mate. We need
you can't read it properly, but I'm getting that he's actually talking about they're releasing 13 players from the Western Sydney Wanderers study. So that's That's apparently what the message is saying. But we'll get that fixed up because, like you said, it's very hard for us to read at the moment.
Yeah, just on that, do you know what happened? Well, I forgot to actually, I did ask Tony in a message over the weekend, but he wasn't sure. But what happened to James Timokowski that they signed from Marconi? Is he injured, or was he injured?
Yeah, I believe he got injured.
Right, okay.
Because Ange Costas has joined us as well. He's talking about something as well, but it's just very hard. I'm trying to get it to read.
Yeah, well, you got the yellow background there. It's got the white sort of come up on your screen a bit. So, mate, you got to speak to the IT guys and
You've got to
that.
get it right because you got Ange Costas, Futoulis, you got a playboard. Yeah, wanting to have their say, and we want them. That's what it's all about. We want to get their messages out there, but we'll get it fixed up definitely next week so we can see that much better. Andy,
mate.
do you want to get the EPL results? Because, mate, a lot of action's getting 2 games left. We know the top 5 is where all the action is, and who's going to finish in that top 5. And with some big results that played a critical part to who's going to finish in that top 5 overnight.
We can't go without mentioning the Champions League and Europa League, Chubbs.
Yeah, definitely. So,
week.
Yeah, you want to read out the Champions League, Europa League, and Premier League results?
All right. So we started with
because we've seen one of the best 2-legged in Champions League games ever in the history, I suppose.
Look,
I can't remember a better game than Inter Barca over 2 legs. Well,
Wednesday morning, as you said, the first leg was a 3-3 result, as we mentioned, which was a classic game. And then Wednesday morning, our time, I was watching this game and I just couldn't. I was actually running late to work and I didn't really care, to be honest, because you couldn't take your eyes away from this game. As we know, finished 4-3 after extra time, but Barcelona were winning 3-2 in the 87th minute. And I don't know if you saw this story about Francesco Acerbi, who at the age of 37 scored the equaliser for Inter to 3-3. 93rd minute, the game went into extra time.
He's only 37. I thought he looked older than us.
Yeah, no, 37. And then, David De Fratesi scored the winner to make it 4-3. And let's be honest, Chubbs, everyone had, I think...
But you know what, when Barcelona had 3-2, it was that game that you could still see another goal coming. It was that kind of game you always sense there's something special still going to happen.
I agree, but I think you'd expect Barcelona to hold them out, Chubbs. You know, I don't know. I just thought, look, a little bit of controversy. I had no problem with the goal and the lead up to the goal, but to make it 3-3. But, if you had asked me, I thought Barcelona were going through this tie. At the start of the tie, both games,
yep.
I would have Barcelona. I think most people have Barcelona progressing. Hats off to Inter. I've got to give a shout out to a good mate of mine, Mark D'Alessandro. A lot of people know in the NPL circle back in the day. And Dilla's a massive Inter fan. We chat quite often about Inter. He gives me a message about Newcastle as well every now and then. But, mate, he's on cloud 9 as all Inter fans are.
They were very unlucky to lose to Man City a couple of years ago. And now Inzaghi's got them back there. But they're a real chance against PSG. As good as PSG's been, and PSG's been in all the big sides at the moment, they're a real threat.
One-off game, Chubbs. I think that's where it's a massive benefit for Inter. But we mentioned, so Thursday morning we had PSG. We know they had a 1-0 aggregate lead, which was that away leg for them back in Arsenal. This game finished 2-1. They were actually leading in the 27th minute. Our first goal we knew was quite crucial. But
Arsenal played some sensational football in the first 20 minutes. But just like their season has been, they've paid the price for not signing a striker. And that's the difference when you have that real classy number 9 that would have got them in that first 20 minutes, maybe got them that goal that they were needed to change that tie. And that's been their problem all season. And like you didn't take your chances against PSG, then 7 minutes later, they got punished.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened. And you know what? There's been a bit said about how Mikel Arteta came out and said they were the best team over 2 legs.
I don't agree there at all. He comes up with some statements.
But he does, and I think he sort of tries to cover a bit of his own backside, so to speak. But you got to sign that Thursday morning game for me, Chubbs. They're actually the better team for me. As you mentioned, I think if they had taken their chances, they probably would have gone a long way. There was a massive chance for Bukayo Saka in that second half.
I think
And
Arsenal, they were really, it's a missed opportunity because they could have really made the final of the Champions League and probably won it this year. And I think even in a lot of ways, even the Premier League, I just think what's cost them is what they've done off the park in terms of signings. And, they've probably missed a real big opportunity this season because, as you said, a lot of teams a little bit out of form and a little bit of so on. But they had a real big chance in this Champions League this season.
yeah, massive one, Chubbs. And already we're hearing that there's already transfer rumours coming around about them in their striker situation. We know, and I know as a Newcastle fan, Alexander Isak is a name that's always mentioned. But we've got friends in chat groups, Chubbs, Arsenal fans are sending us links to players that they're linked with and reportedly signing and negotiating with already. So season isn't even over, and they're already looking for this avenue or this outlet that they're missing in a striker to put these chances away and hopefully for Arsenal fans take them to the next step.
Andy, before you get on to the Europa League, I want to ask you a question. It's like I'm watching Comedy Company here. When I look at this EPL table, they're 16th and 17th. It's Ipswich, Leicester, Southampton underneath. And you're telling me Man United and Tottenham are playing the Europa League showdown final, and one of these teams is going to have a better season than Arsenal. Will have silverware. So one of these teams could come out. Even Tottenham could have either their neighbour Arsenal could have the final, so that they've had a better season. But I've never seen this. 16th and 17th are about to play in the Europa League final.
Yeah, it's incredible, Chubbs. It's incredible, and I don't know what it goes to say about the other competitions. Your Spanish
and watching that second leg on an artificial surface, that wow.
Yeah, the
ball was moving. The ball was moving 100. Oh, mate, it was. But credit to look, Ange Postecoglou. The big news is saying he's not hanging around, no matter what the result is. Right. Who do you think? Man U yesterday, watching them against West Ham, very disappointed, but they've rested players. Tottenham lost to Crystal Palace, they rested players. Obviously, the big ones in 2 weeks on that Thursday morning, our time. Who are you favouring there?
So I'll tell you what, I think Ange, and look, being Australian, I will be leaning towards Ange Postecoglou.
Well, we'll all be for that purpose.
For that purpose, exactly. But I actually think he's galvanised the team. He's got a few players back, and barring the weekend result, which you saw, he rested players, but they're actually playing good football, and they have played in patches, but they had a lot of injuries. They've actually played some decent football, believe it or not, throughout the year, depending on, irrespective of where they're sitting on the table. But I've got to lean to Tottenham's way. I really do.
I agree with you, but Man United, the season they've had, if they can win a Europa League out of all this where they are, it's just going to be incredible. And they're a type of team that we've seen. When they didn't get knocked out in that extra time against Lyon, it's like, is it destined for them to win this? They still haven't lost a game in Europe at all. They've been sensational in Europe. So, it's going to be a very intriguing game over Bilbao, Atletico Bilbao's home ground there in Spain. It's going to be very intriguing. But like you said, it's probably a toss of a coin as well.
I think it is, Chuz, but you got to look. Man United put Athletic Bilbao a very good Athletic Bilbao. They're top four.
Well, I know Tottenham didn't want to play him. They were worried about him.
Yeah,
they wanted to meet Bobo Glimt. So but Man United over 2 legs just destroyed him.
Yeah, they did. They absolutely. I mean, 7-1 on aggregate. It finished after the first leg was 3-0, and we know they had a player sent off early, but for them to capitalise on that. The goals 100%. Came quite late, but they were quality. And look, both teams, you've got to say, are galvanised, Chubbs, considering the season they've had. So it can go either way. I agree, toss a coin. But
and you've got to say, whoever wins, it really sets up well for next season because they can forget about the bad season, and it helps bringing in players as well. Winning the Europa League, you're going to be playing back into the Champions League. It just changes all your transfer window plans.
Oh, well, you're able to offer players Champions League football now, Chubbs.
And a club like Man United usually do that no matter what. So
correct. Yeah, no, it's absolutely massive for both. Really, really, really looking forward to this final.
So, like we said, in 2 weeks, up be Thursday morning, and then we'll have the big one on the Sunday morning our time, or Saturday morning. I think it's Sunday morning our time would be the PSG versus Inter game, which would be very intriguing. You know, again, we talk about Spain and England being the best competitions, but there you go. You're going to have a representative from France and a representative from Italy. That's what's beauty about the Champions League.
Well, exactly right, and as they came out and said, you know, it's reported that the French league is always called the Farmers League. Charles, we joke about it as well in WhatsApp groups. But yeah, especially for Luis Enrique. You know, he's had. I don't know if you know the story. He lost his daughter, unfortunately,
yes.
young age. Very, very sad. We know he's a great manager, but you know what he's done with PSG, and he even joked about it. But they call it the Farmers League, you know. So it's a massive achievement for both PSG and Inter.
Andy, before you go into the EPL results, I just want to say we talked about Barcelona being what a game it was during that week. Then Barcelona topped it off yesterday morning in another dramatic game with the El Clasico with Real Madrid, where they were down 2-0. They went up 4-2, 5-2 at the end. But wow, Barcelona are really becoming the entertainers of football at the moment.
And you know what? They've had the wood over Real Madrid this season. You got to say.
Yeah, when I saw 2-0, I was getting messages left, right. Real Madrid are killing Barcelona then before you know it, Barcelona are up 4-2.
Yeah, they got 2 early goals. You got to mention Kylian Mbappe. We know the quality of him, a hat trick in that game.
He's
this
had a
morning.
Good season for Real Madrid, despite everything.
Oh yeah, and there was a lot said about him going to Real Madrid.
That's right.
But that youngster who just continues to impress, 17-year-old Lamine Yamal.
He's on a different planet.
Oh, different planet, Chubbs. Different planet. I think he's It's hard to say. They're a quality team, but he's just a bit of a standout there at Barcelona.
100%.
17 years old, standing out and doing what he's doing. But then for them, they were 4-2 up at half time. So those games, there's six goals in the first half. And it's funny because the El Clasico over years sometimes has been...
Used to be the dreaded 1-0 or very tight games. Yeah.
Right. That's right. Yeah. But as I mentioned,
and the big news out of Real Madrid too was the big news was Ancelotti's gone, and also Xavier Alonso from Bayern Leverkusen that we knew was a well kept secret. He'll be taking over Real Madrid.
Yeah, that's a massive one. We know the season that he had last season. He was on a lot of hit lists, including Liverpool's, for what we had to read. Charles, before Arne Slot was appointed, but yeah, massive news. And the thing is, only a few weeks ago they fought out a big 3-2 result in extra time. There was a lot said there. I don't know if you remember Antonio Rudiger, Barcelona and Real Madrid in the Copa del Rey. So
correct.
They've had the wood on them the last couple of weeks. And yeah, that's just a huge result. And just in the standings there, they've put themselves now 7 points clear of Real Madrid.
Yeah, no, I think the title's definitely done.
I think it's done. 3 games to go. You'd say Barcelona will be champions of Spain there.
100%. All right, Andy, do you want to quickly get into the EPL results we had over this weekend, which will play a big part, like I said, in that battle for those European spots, especially for the top 5 Champions League spots?
Yeah, so overnight, Chubbs, Liverpool 2, Arsenal 2, Man United 0, West Ham 2. This one was a bit of a shock. Nottingham Forest drew 2-2 at home to relegated Leicester City.
Yep.
A great result for the remaining teams that are in the top 5, and it continues that slide of Nottingham Forest. I want to also quickly bring up what their owner did during that game too, Chubbs. I don't know if you saw that. Tottenham 0, Crystal Palace 2 was another overnight result, as was Newcastle 2, Chelsea 0. Bournemouth 0, Aston Villa 1, a big win for Aston Villa in their top 5 ambition. Fulham 1, Everton 3, Ipswich 0, Brentford 1, Southampton drew with Man City 0-0, another massive result for that top 5 clash, a relegated Southampton. And Wolves went down 2-0 at home to Brighton. So the standings at the moment, Charles, as we know, Liverpool 15 points clear of Arsenal on 68, and we've now got Newcastle on 66 points, 2 points behind Arsenal.
Chance to go in second spot if you beat them this week.
That's right. We got him this week. It's going to be look unbelievable for us if we were to jump into that second spot. Manchester City currently in fourth on 65 after their slip up on the weekend. Chelsea, after going down to Newcastle, are still in fifth spot on 63. Aston Villa that continue the big
They're
climb.
coming like a wet sail. Do you think Aston Villa, like, I'm starting to really worry that result for Man City, 0-0 with Southampton, was a very bad result for them. And with 2 games to go, can they miss out, Andy?
Look, Aston Villa have got a pretty tough one, Chubbs.
They're in form.
They've got Tottenham and Man United remaining. The
Who,
two
Aston Villa?
Aston Villa.
So
yeah.
you would say that's 6 points because they're both going to be just concentrating on Europa.
Very true. Very true. So they're in it up to their ears. Nottingham Forest, we mentioned they had that draw over the weekend. They're still in the hunt on 62 points, and then there's a bit.
They're a chance to miss out of Europe or totally.
Look, I think they'll be okay
because only one team's going to go to Europa, and the other team spot from Europa.
The 7th spot gets Conference League.
Yeah, well, they'll go to the Conference League. They should go to the Conference League, but it's from where they were all season. I think they'll be really disappointed.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, I don't know if you saw their owner, your Greek compatriot, come on the field on the weekend, approach about the result, and look, it wasn't a good look, to be honest. Poor Nuno was sitting there thinking, "What's this guy doing on the field?" And what do I say to him in front of all these spectators and cameras from worldwide? Incredible.
No, he wears his heart on his sleeve, Marek.
He tips his money in too, mate. So I think he's entitled to do whatever he wants. To be honest,
100%. Andy, so Chelsea as well would be very disappointed with that loss, but
let's look at their top 5. Yeah. I'll read out the last 2 fixtures for you, Chubbs, and the top 5. So we'll actually start at Arsenal. So
because don't worry about Liverpool.
Don't worry about Liverpool. Arsenal, Newcastle this weekend, and then in the last round, as we know, all these last games are played at the same time. My favourite fixture, Chubbs, is the last round.
Yep.
Arsenal will be travelling to Southampton, which we saw over the weekend. Won't be an easy beat.
No.
And you got Newcastle, their last 2 games. So we've got Arsenal this weekend. Our last game is at home to Everton.
That's a good draw for you.
It's a decent draw. Man City, and we've got to remember, Man City coming up this weekend. We've got the FA Cup final. And then there are remaining 2 games. They've got Bournemouth at home, and then they've got Fulham away.
You would think with their quality they should be able to get over the line, but they're very, like you said, they throw in a result like Southampton that just surprises you.
Yeah, correct. And then you've got Chelsea. They've got Man United at home this weekend, and then their last game is, and this is going to be the one, Chubbs. Their last game is away to Nottingham Forest, another team.
What a game!
That's right, another team aiming to jag their top 5 spot. And the other thing with Chelsea, they've got then the Europa
conference final, because we never mentioned that they made the final as well
against Real Betis. Correct. So are they going to have one eye on that, or are they going to be looking at that? It's intriguing. It's intriguing. And then, as we mentioned, Aston Villa, they've got both Europa League teams in Tottenham and Man United, which you got to say, like you said, Chubbs, they'll be resting players. I think Aston Villa's in a box seat to jag one of those spots as well.
You don't think Aston Villa were coming 10th and 11th, they dropped down and they were sort of having that bad period. They've really rejuvenated themselves. And like you said, I really think they'll finish in the top 5. I agree with you. I think they will finish in the top 5.
Yeah, there's nothing else to concentrate on, Chumps, for them. And like you said, mate, they're coming home with a wet sail, and that result on the weekend was massive. If anyone was going to slip up, it would have been them. We know Bournemouth at home are well, you know, any game in the Premier League can be tricky, but they went to Bournemouth. They stole the points. On the back of, I did watch that game. That they didn't have much possession. Bournemouth dominated the game, but as we know, possession doesn't really mean anything in the modern game, Chubbs.
No. Andy, we were speaking last night. We were watching this game, Newcastle-Chelsea. It probably wasn't your best display, but when you get to round 36, 37, 38, it's not about how you perform. It's just a matter, can you get 3 points? And Newcastle's done that again. And that, for me, is probably confirmed. And congratulations. I think you will be part of the Big Five. And I think it's very important because, like you said, like a striker is being talked about at Arsenal and Liverpool, there'll be no reason for him to leave now.
Well, that's the thing, Chubbs. I think, look, if we can get potentially a point out of Arsenal, and you know the crowd will be a big factor in the home game, the last home game against
You've
Everton.
beaten them in your last 3 games. You've got the best record against Arsenal. They're dreading playing you. I know that. And that point that Arsenal got yesterday, it was so vital because at 2-0 down, I know the supporters were going. I mean, that point they got yesterday is a big difference for them because if they lost yesterday, mate, they weren't guaranteed either with 2 games to go making that top 5. And the way they've been losing every game, they haven't picked up, you know. So Arteta at halftime, I give him credit. He turned that game around, and you know, at the end, they could have even won that game.
Yeah, they could have. They could have. Yeah, I did watch that game as well. But yeah, look, you know, believe it or not, Chubbs, Newcastle, we went into our shells when Nicholas Jackson got sent off. They went down to 10-men, Chelsea, and
you just didn't go on with it.
No, their manager just he turned the game on the head, and commentary even said it. It looked like at stages Newcastle were the one with a man down. You got to give credit to Chelsea, but we managed to hold on 1-0. Then the goal came late, the second goal, which was crucial. We obviously needed that crucial second goal. I was getting messages left, right, and centre. Mate, you guys need a second goal because the game, the way it's looking, just like Chelsea, we're going to jag and pluck away a 1-1 draw. But thankfully, that didn't happen. And yeah, all attention turns to this week against Arsenal. Chubbs, the banter's already started with a couple of Arsenal mates, with some of them that you know. But we've had the wood on them. We have, including the 2 legs of the FA Cup semi-final. Carling Cup semi-final. So, look, they'll be definitely wanting to get their revenge on us. But it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Andy, we know we're getting close in the championship to the most, you know, the most lucrative payout game ever. The richest game played in the world. There's 4 teams left battling for that. Tomorrow we've got Sheffield United taking on Bristol City and Sunderland on Wednesday taking on Coventry. Out of those 4 teams, who's your pick? Do you think will join Burnley and Leeds in the Premier League?
Well, Chubbs, firstly, you got to say tomorrow morning, you have to say Sheffield United.
You have to favour Sheffield United the way they've been going.
3-0 firstly, and as much as I hate to say it, also that was a massive win for Sunderland away to Coventry.
Correct.
The other Chubbs, they won 2-1, and now they're at home, so they've firmly got the advantage back on home turf, as we know. Sunderland, a massive club up in the northeast, Chubbs, where obviously Newcastle's biggest rival. So part of me doesn't really want them to make it, but I think they'll be playing in the playoff final with Sheffield.
You wouldn't want a derby again back in the Premier League?
Oh, look, I wouldn't mind it, mate. It's a fantastic. It's probably one of the best derbies in European football. If you ever go back and see what it means to the fans, sets of fans in both Sunderland and Newcastle, it's massive. But you got to say at this stage, Sheffield United, I can't see them losing that 3-0 advantage they've got from the
definitely.
first.
And you would think on form and the way they finished the season, I mean, they were a bit unlucky not to finish in the top 2.
Yeah, correct.
You would favour them, but like you said, Sunderland, you know, or even, you know, Coventry still can turn that around, can still surprise.
Oh, for sure. And that's going to be an interesting thing because Coventry finished quite a bit behind Sunderland, but they actually dominated that game the other morning.
We know Frank Lampard's done a terrific job to get them in that playoff positions from when he took over.
Yeah, 100%. They managed to sneak into. I think they finished 5th in the top 6 there. So, but anything can happen. But definitely two juicy ties coming up in the championship, Chubbs, which we know how big that is. You mentioned the most lucrative club game in world football.
100%, and you know. And I just hope that these teams like Leeds and Burnley, that when they come this year, they're a little bit not yo-yo like we've seen in the last 2 seasons. The 3 clubs that have come up have gone back down. Hopefully they can do a little bit better next year because it's very strange coming now to those last few games. There's no relegation battle, no championship battle, and it's only the top 5 left. It's been a very weird sort of season this year.
It has, but I think I mentioned last week or the week before when Leeds were confirmed and Burnley were confirmed. I just can't see them getting it wrong this time. But what does it mean, Chubbs? It means 2 more teams are going to go down out of the 3, or obviously 3.
Yeah.
Without knowing who the third one is going to be promoted. But But which of the current crop can you say, it's just that
Well,
fine
look, where
line.
West Ham, Man U, and Tottenham finished, I mean, you would expect Man U and Tottenham to be much better next season, not finishing
Absolutely,
down there.
absolutely.
West Ham, you're going to have to wonder. They really need to get, because, they're not going to be happy where they finished as well this season. But it's interesting times ahead. But like you said, not much we can do with the Premier League this year. There's no relegation battle come round 38 or championship game. It's all about that top 5, but we'll be watching that very closely in the next 2 games, and we'll see what happens there. It's still a ding-dong battle.
Yeah, the biggest thing on that last round is those 2 teams playing against each other, Chelsea and Nottingham Forest.
It'll be a cracker. So hopefully there's still a lot to play for come round 38. Andy, once again, thank you. We've come to the end of our program.
Thanks, Chubbs.
It's been another good show. We had Alex Paulson on from Auckland FC. Thank him. Andy Montgomery from Mount Druitt Rangers and Stealth Rallis on again. And we'll be back during the week with any news that breaks, and we'll be back next week bigger and better as always. So once again, Andy, have a great night, and thank you for your contribution once again.
Have a good week, mate. See you next
too.
week.
See you next week.